Welcome to segment 3 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, July 21st. I'd like to thank again the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week. Our guest in this segment is Calvin Cook. Calvin is with the Shawnigan Residents Association, and you guys are fighting against one of the craziest projects, you know, in a litany of crazy things. It's the, I don't even know the name of it, so why don't you tell us the actual name and the current situation?
Certainly. Thank you, Jack, for inviting me back on again, and thanks to your crew. Jack, what we have here is a permit that was actually given full operation last Friday by our Ministry of Environment. And what that permit allows for is the dumping, it's a 50-year project, and what it allows for is the dumping of up to 5 million tons, 100,000 tons per year for the next 50 years of contaminated soil into the watershed, the upper reaches of the Shawnigan Lake watershed, which is a designated community watershed.
Yeah, so our provincial government and all arms of it are in agreement that it's completely safe to put 5 million tons of contaminated soils a couple of kilometers away from Shawnigan Lake, and also a couple of kilometers away from Victoria's drinking water reservoir, Souk Lake. So keep that in mind, folks. This is a real threat not only to the people of Shawnigan, but to the people of Victoria. It just seems so absolutely crazy that I know it took people in Shawnigan a long time, as you've told me, to realize that this actually was going to go ahead, because everybody thought it's so crazy that it can't. So what's happening right now? Is the thing in operation?
It will be, yeah. Currently they're receiving material on the site. There's not a lot of material. The material will come in from various industrial sites throughout the province. You'll sit on a management pad before they're put into a containment cell. None of the containment cells are currently operational, so the material that has been brought into that site is sitting on these management pads. As the Residents Association, a couple of weeks ago, we were handed a private secret document that was handed to the Residents Association, and this document was a 17-page legal document, and what it outlined was a 50-50 partnership agreement between Active Earth, the engineering firm that supplied the science to the government, so the government, the statutory decision maker, could make their informed decision on the merits of this project. And the other partner, of course, was the proponent, South Island Aggregates. So here we have a rather unique situation where, under a professional reliance model, the government doesn't have the expertise. So they go out and, in this case, get an engineering firm to provide them with science so they can make their determination.
Now, the government doesn't hire the company.
No.
So South Island Aggregates hired Active Earth.
That's correct.
And Active Earth did all the studies that showed that all of this is safe.
Correct. And
why would anybody believe that? Why is our government so stupidly corrupt that they would believe a consultant hired by the proponent? Because everybody knows,
but all of these consultants
what you pay for
are bound by a professional code of ethics that they have to adhere to. So that's what the government is relying on, is this professional code of ethics. In the spring of 2013, this agreement was struck. The corporate records were updated in 2014, 2015. Now they'll say
which agreement?
The private 50-50 partnership agreement between the engineering firm and the proponent for the project.
So there was an agreement outside of the hiring of Active Earth to do the scientific study. There was another agreement.
Correct.
What was that agreement?
And that's basically defined that any profits from the project going forward would be split on a 50-50 basis. So what that brings into question is just how reliable is the science that was presented to the Environment Ministry for them to make their determination, because certainly the experts that we hired, as you alluded to, that certainly the ones that we hired suggested that the science was very questionable and that the conclusions they had drawn from their research were completely different than what we had. One of the things that they suggested, that the ground was impervious rock, and that the citizens of Shawnigan Lake would be protected from leachates for over 100,000 years. They actually said 103,000 years before leachates from that site would reach Shawnigan Lake.
So there's a fact. It's going to take 103,000 years for the leachate to go from the dump into the lake.
According to the proponents, Active Earth,
Right.
correct. Our scientists who looked at that exact same data noticed errors in their calculations and said that a more accurate calculation based on Their experience was 49 days to reach Shawnigan Creek and another 3 days to reach Shawnigan Lake. So certainly there's a great deal of disparity in the information, within the actual science. When this was presented at the Environmental Appeal Board hearings, our scientific data was not given weight. The scientific data presented by Active Earth, the proponent in this case, was given a tremendous amount of weight. Our scientists testified, they were qualified as experts, testified and had to stand on cross-examination on the evidence they gave. Active Earth was never qualified as expert. They never testified at the Environmental Appeal Board hearings and never stood on cross-examination of the evidence they gave. The
And it turned out there's a deal between Active Earth and the company that owns the land to share the profits.
Of the outcome of the
so,
venture.
I mean, we can see that there are some very, very, very big problems here, and we've known about these problems for a long time. I mean, the whole thing is crazy, and yet it keeps moving inexorably ahead. So why would our government, why would Christy Clark allow Shawnigan Lake to be poisoned?
I think that's a key question. And when we look forward, 50 years from now, and we have this discussion with our grandchildren about fighting the Ministry of Environment to protect clean drinking water, they'll probably be rather incredulous that that would ever have happened, not unlike walking uphill to school barefoot in the snow both ways. Come on, Granddad, that never seriously happened. But it is a case. Today we're in BC Supreme Court, and what we're seeking, among other things, is an injunction that will prevent material from coming on the site until an actual judicial review is held sometime later this year. And that judicial review is to review that Environmental Appeal Board ruling.
So you've gone to court to stop the company from doing anything, just shut it down for a while.
That's correct.
Well, it seems to me that you should win. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, certainly. I mean, the other side, of course, will have very strong arguments as well. There's millions of dollars at stake here, as well as professional firms' reputations. And certainly what we're just trying to do is get to the bottom of this. There's been a number of secret agreements that have come out. Under oath, the proponent testified that there was no further secret agreements. And yet, through the good consciousness of a whistleblower, they presented this information to us. We weren't sure if it was even valid, if it was authentic. The proponents have now said, yes, it is an authentic document, but it was never ever put into place, so it has no validity to it.
And what again was the document?
Basically, it's a 17-page legal document where the two companies formed a single joint venture company, a numbered company, and the terms of the profit sharing were defined within that agreement.
And once again, this is the company, South Island Aggregates, that owns the quarry and is going to be running it and making the money from it, and the consulting company they hired to prepare the study that showed it's basically safe to do. And I mean, the third partner in this seems to be the provincial government, who allows it to go ahead.
Certainly, I think what we have to do is take a look at the evidence and allow a judge to make that determination. And what it is, it's an opportunity for the people of Victoria and any of your viewers, any of your people who are interested in this, to take a look at our website, thesra.ca. All of those legal documents are there. They're posted. They can review them. They can take a look at the evidence. They can take a look at my affidavit and determine for themselves, make that determination based on that evidence, how they feel about it. And is this, I mean, on first blush, putting a contaminated dump site into the upper reaches of a community watershed makes no sense. When we say that the science is faulty, when we say morally, ethically, culturally, it's wrong, and yet certainly it's still proceeding, I think a number of questions have to be raised. And what we would ask, if people don't agree with this type of activity, that they phone their MLA and they ask them what would prevent that type of project from happening in our own watershed, to our own drinking water, because if it can happen in a designated community watershed, what other areas are out of reach?
Yeah, this is so dangerous on so many different fronts. Andrew Weaver did some water sampling himself. Andrew Weaver is the Green MLA. What were those results?
You know, it's interesting that you asked that question. The Active Earth, the disdain that they showed for the citizens of Shawnigan Lake, they actually wrote in an email, and they described the proponents of this as a small vocal group of effing retards.
That's you.
That's us. And that's people like Andrew Weaver. That's people like Elizabeth May. That's people like John Horrigan. That's people like Bill Routley. There's an individual like Rafi. welcome to a very exclusive
And thousands
club.
of people who live in Shawnigan Lake.
15,000 people signed a signature in relatively short order saying they were opposed to this.
Yeah.
And with good reason they're opposed to this. Andrew Weaver went out and took independent water samples from the site, an adjacent site next door where material has been stored, and found elevated levels of heavy metals, up to 19 times acceptable levels. So what we're asking the Ministry of Environment to do, because they had taken soil samples from the site, surface soil samples, and what we're saying is, no, what you need to do is get down into the site next door. This isn't even the permitted site, this is the site next door. We will fight that permit. And we also want to know what's buried on the site next door. Do we have a remediation effort that has to take place there? And according to Andrew Weaver's results, there is significant contaminants coming off of that site, draining into Shawnigan Creek, which then discharges into Shawnigan Lake.
So this is from what's already there.
The project hasn't even started, Jack. There's roughly 600 tons of contaminated soil on there. About 1 day's production when this goes into full swing. We haven't even started, and already we're showing contaminants in. They're saying, the Ministry of Environment said, well, none of the monitoring wells in the area were showing any contaminants. This has been our driest spring ever. There would be no opportunity for contaminants to flow. The project hasn't even started, and independent people are raising some very serious concerns. Independent results are showing contaminants. If there's any risk at all, should our Ministry of Environment, the very people we are asking to protect us, should they be allowing this risk to be perpetrated?
Who's the Minister of the Environment?
Currently we have Mary Polak.
Well, I mean, if you want to make a phone call, folks, call Mary Polak. And the whole thing is a disgrace from beginning to end. Calvin, I want to thank you and the people of Shawnigan who are fighting so hard to stop this.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate your efforts. And again, anybody, please visit our website for all that information, review the documents, and make your own determination, and help if you can.
Thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum, and stay tuned because this situation is so crazy. Thank you.